Hello, you're listening to episode 10 of 8-Minute Movies, Alienated, a podcast talking about the 1979 movie Alien in 8-minute chunks, presented by me, Kieran, and him, Peter.
Hello.
How you doing there?
I'm doing well. I am awake. I am raring to go. I'm quite tired, actually, honestly. But not as tired as I was that time before.
You're never gonna give that up, are you?
Listen to the last one if you don't know what we're talking about.
And also listen to the last one. This is a sequential podcast. You can't just tune in.
It doesn't make much sense to jump in at this point.
No. We are 2/3 of the way through this uphill slog. It's all downhill from here in every sense that can possibly be meant.
That's true.
How have you been doing? Poor podcast performance reviews aside.
I've been doing okay. As you know, I have a topic to bring to the first part of the podcast.
Yeah, the audience has been on tenterhooks since last week to hear about crosswords, and I myself, I've never crossed a word. So wow me, come on, bring your A game for one.
Okay, so I've never really liked crosswords as I understand them. I find that the format feels a bit boring because it's essentially you're filling in words in a grid, and it's a bit like just a trivia game in a weird format. It felt like most of the ones that I'd seen were basically just testing your general knowledge, and if you didn't know it, then you can't get it. Maybe you'd be able to get clued in by some of the crosses, but it didn't feel like a very compelling format to me. But I did sort of wish that I understood at least how cryptic crosswords work. So cryptic crosswords, if you don't know, which you might not if you are listening and say from the US where they're not very common, it's a format where all of the clues kind of read like nonsense because they are giving a very kind of obscure and wordplay and sometimes like anagram based clue to the to what the word is, and there's a specific way that you're supposed to form clues for cryptic crosswords in order to give the answer. And in theory, that's something that's quite nice for me because I like kind of decoding clues and that sort of thing. I enjoy that.
As I understand it, there's like a sort of highly codified language around the clues for cryptic crosswords. So it'll be like they'll use the word twisted or jumbled, and then you'll know that the actual clue, it's like an anagram of whatever they're trying to get you to point at.
Yeah, the way it usually works, and there are kind of exceptions to this, but there's one of the words or phrases or part of the clue is what's known as the definition. So that's just kind of the straight what the answer is in a way. And then there's some sort of indicator word often in the clue as well, which says this is the kind of thing that you have to do to solve this. So like you said, if it says like mixed up or something, then maybe somewhere there's an anagram in this clue. And then the rest of the clue is that like the cryptic part of the clue, where if you figure out what the method of decoding it, you should come to an answer which the kind of definition part of the clue will confirm to you that you got it right, because it will make sense. And so in theory, I quite like that, but I've always found them quite annoying. They've always felt a bit too obscure to me. I've never been able to decode the clues. And I thought, well, maybe I'll just dedicate some time, because I was bored, to just really trying to figure out how these work. And I started doing it just before going to bed. And what I found was that it was just this amazing substitute to doing things like looking at Twitter before going to sleep.
Doom scrolling.
Right, yeah. Because what happens is, you look at Twitter, you see something interesting, then you end up going down this rabbit hole, or you see something terrible and you just end up going down this anger rabbit hole. And I found that it was not a very kind of relaxing way to send myself to sleep. I'd start thinking about stuff, and then my brain would get all noisy, and I'd just not want to sleep. So what this does is instead completely occupy your mind with stuff that it can't possibly matter. You're just kind of thinking about anagrams of weird phrases, and you're completely focused on trying to decode these quite obscure clues. And what I'd find is that after about 15 or 20 minutes of this, I'd put my phone down and go, you know what? I would rather sleep than carry on thinking about this nonsense, and I'd be out, like a light within 5 minutes most nights.
I'm not sure this is like the resounding endorsement of them you seem to think it is. Like,
there's more.
I'm doing this thing, and it exhausts my brain so much that I just can't bear it anymore.
Okay, I know what you're saying, but I think that a lot of people will appreciate this idea of I need something just to kind of send me to sleep that is not going to make me too angry because it doesn't matter. But there's a bit more to this. A couple of months after I first started doing this, a person called Chris Remo, who I don't know who you're aware of, but
I am not.
He is someone who used to write for a website called Idle Thumbs and do the podcasts for that website as well. And was for a while as well the community manager at Double Fine. And what I didn't realize is that he's actually moved to London permanently, as far as I know. I'm not exactly sure why, but he has moved to London anyway, and is apparently not doing what he used to do, which was work on. He was also part of a developer called Campo Santo who did games like Firewatch, and then I think that was the only one actually in the end. And then they were kind of absorbed by Valve, never to be heard of again. This is a thing that happens with Valve. Someone goes to work for Valve, and then you never hear from them again. So anyway, it seems like Chris Remo got out and is now in London, presumably because he had to flee the country. And then he apparently has just always done the New York Times crossword, which is not a cryptic crossword. It's a different sort of crossword, which I'll talk about in a minute. But he's always done it, and he decided, I guess, just as a thing to do, to start streaming his solving of these crosswords on YouTube. And I don't know about you, but I'm quite a big fan of the just someone does a task that they're quite good at and has quite a soothing voice and describes what they're doing genre of videos on YouTube. Do you know what I mean?
Let me interject here to say that I do know what you mean, and Big Clive is my guy. Do you know Big Clive?
I don't know Big Clive. Who's Big Clive?
So Big Clive is an electrician who, well, one of my favorite things that he does on YouTube is he buys cheap electric tap things from China and dismantles them to explain how if you plug it in it'll kill you.
Right. Okay.
and he's got such a soothing brogue of a voice that I mean, you don't see him. All you see is his hands like working on whatever he's dismantling. But like He's the closest to an ASMR voice channel I guess I would listen to. But they're really interesting to watch as well. So he's got all your bases covered. Big Clive, shout out to Big Clive. Link us back, Big Clive. How does this work?
No. Are you aware of the lock-picking lawyer?
Oh yeah. With his strange lilt. And the way he digitally removes himself from the shiny bits of locks so you can't see his face.
Wow, does he do that? I did not know.
Yeah,
that.
no, that's a thing.
Wow. Okay.
Look in the comments. People are always pointing them out.
Yeah, I didn't. I never noticed that, but I will look out for that now. So it's that sort of thing to me. He's just kind of calmly going through the crossword, talking about how he's getting these guesses and filling it out, and it was just quite a soothing thing to have on in the background while I'm at work or something. I don't know. And but after a while, it made me want to attempt this style of crossword that he was doing, because it turns out, and this is something that I never knew before, US style crosswords are quite different to UK style crosswords. So if you think of a UK style crosswords, it's kind of a grid, and you've got lines going across and down, and maybe they cross kind of every other letter. There's a cross or something like that. Yeah,
I'm familiar with the broad concept of crosswords.
Yeah, but the reason that I'm explaining like that is because that's not really the case with US style crosswords. With a US style crossword, there are crosses and downs, but it's not just every other letter. It's every letter, every single square, almost, apart from a couple of blanks on the grid, will have a cross. Almost every square. I think I've only ever seen one puzzle where there are what they call unchecked squares, where there's a letter that you have to get on its own, which doesn't have a cross in the other direction. So it's all crosses, and that means that they can be a lot more kind of loose and creative with the sorts of clues that they're giving. So you end up with something that's a kind of halfway between the kind of trivia style crossword, which I didn't really like, and the more obscure kind of cryptic crosswords, which I sort of like now, but are quite annoying and exhausting to do. And they get quite creative with them. So you have quite a lot of these crosswords will have a theme, like a puzzle within the puzzle that you have to solve. And it's just, there's more going on than what you would perhaps imagine might be in a crossword puzzle.
So I'm not entirely sure I'm getting this. So there aren't any sort of blank squares at all?
Well, there are a few, but the majority of the grid is filled out with clues. So there are a lot of clues in each puzzle, because it's just if you look up the New York Times crossword, which is like a classic one, then you will see what the grid looks like, and it's different to what you maybe imagine a crossword grid looking like.
Yeah, because I'm sort of imagining from your description it ending up looking more like a word search.
Yeah, almost. There are a few blank spaces, but not many. And it's and the format of the New York Times one in particular is that on Monday it starts out quite gentle and easy, and then it increases in difficulty every day until the hardest one that you get is on Saturday, where the clues are more obscure. It's just more difficult overall to get. And then on Sunday, they ratchet down the difficulty a bit again, but the grid is much bigger. So it's just a giant crossword, and it usually has some sort of clever theme going on in that one as well, that kind of adds to it in some way. And so it's kind of, there's this kind of natural rhythm to them over the week that I've been really sort of enjoying getting into. But there are a couple of drawbacks.
Hmm.
Which is that it's a US...
Sorry. Before you get into that, I'll just I'll edit it so I'm not interrupting you. Yeah, I've just looked up the New York Times crossword, and yeah, it does look quite different than what I would expect. I mean, it's just it is mostly grid with only like a dozen or so blank squares. That's quite interesting.
Yeah, and I quite like this because even if you don't know an answer, it's often quite easy to get from the crosses. So if you don't really like a trivia style question, it's quite common that if you look in the other direction, you'd be able to get most of the letters for it from less trivia type clues, and then once you've unpicked it, you might be able to guess the remaining letters, and so it feels like it's more of a puzzle in that way. It's less of a see how much you know. But that said, there is a slight drawback to this style of puzzle, which is that it is a US crossword, and they are not shy about putting in very US specific knowledge in there. So there are a lot of clues which relate to US sports teams, a lot of clues that relate to US politicians, and just some US centric things which you might know some of just because American culture just...
It's ubiquitous.
Right, it just spreads over the world, and some of it you just get through osmosis eventually. But there are, I think it's fair to say, there's a lot of stuff which is so specific that it just doesn't occur to me. And also, you got things like to think about, like US spellings and all of that kind of business as well. It is arguably more difficult to do as a non-American, and I do get tripped up by that a lot, and need to look up some of the answers when I get truly stuck, which is occasionally true, especially towards the latter part of the week. But on the whole, I like them, and I really wish that this style of it was more common over here, because it's completely kind of changed my view of what a crossword could be. These are often like they're done creatively. They've got some sort of really creative gimmick to them, or they have like cheeky clues with a lot of wordplay in them and that sort of thing. And it's if you like words, like if you like language, they're quite fun to think around in a way that I've never really associated before with crosswords. I think I had probably exactly the same attitude to you thinking about what a crossword was, just kind of a boring sort of word puzzle that isn't that interesting to solve.
Yeah, I mean, what I've done, you know, I'm cool original. I'm thinking of, I don't know why, whatever the non-cryptic style is called, trivia, I guess. And they're fine, but a lot of the time it's like, what sports person did this? And I'm like, who knows?
Yeah, and as I say, you definitely get that in these crosswords, but I would say more than half the time it's possible to get around it by working on the crosses. Sometimes you get a little knot of answers which you're just not getting because they've got very specific pieces of trivia in a corner. There was one the other day that just made me furious because of the number of names it expected me to know, and I just wasn't getting it. And I kept on writing tweets to the person that set that crossword on Twitter, and then deleting the tweet before sending it.
Wow, furious.
Yeah, I was like, I need to. I just needed to get it out of my system. You know, I was just so annoyed by some of these clues, because generally, because I don't. The thing I like about these US style ones is that they aren't reliant on trivia. But this one was like, oh well, come on, like 30 of these clues need me to either know someone's name or like a very specific brand name that we maybe don't have over here, or some government agency or something like that, and it was just getting right up right on my nerves. That was a Thursday puzzle, that one.
Going back to my history with crosswords, cryptic, of course, being the other one, and I just don't think I ever had a good experience with them because everyone. Well, my sister and my mum are really good at cryptic crosswords, and do them all the time. Like, and they were never really any good at explaining to me the fact, because I always approached them like it was some sort of challenge, right? That you had to figure out from first principles what each individual clue was talking about. But it's not. Like I said earlier, there's this sort of like codified language that it basically points you to what you should be looking for. But no one ever explained that to me.
No, you need to know the system, and even then it's hard. Yeah,
but without that key, like they might as well have been written in Sanskrit or something. You know?
Yeah, they're complete nonsense, and that's what makes them great for sleeping, because they you're just staring at these words that don't really mean anything, and trying to make something of them, and after a while you're just like, okay, I'm done, sleep time now. And
the other kind of crossword that my mum quite likes are called skeleton crosswords. Have you heard of those?
I am not aware of skeleton crosswords. Go on.
Right, so what you arrive with is a completely blank grid, like it's just literally white blocks, and everything like that, and they're numbered, I think.
Okay.
And you have to start solving clues in order to figure out where the black, the crossed out squares should go.
Okay.
So you are building the puzzle as you solve it. It's like an extra level of crossword complexity on top of regular crosswords. I'll send you one, actually. I've got about 1 million of them downloaded because I have to print them for her.
Yes, send me one. I'll see how I get on with it.
Yeah,
I have no idea whether I'll be good at that or not. Are they cryptic as well?
I don't know, because of course I haven't bothered, because generally if you say something's got crosswords in it, I'm in a different state.
Right.
But I'll send you it, and you can report back next time on your progress. That'll be your homework.
Yeah, and I guess your homework might be, just because you enjoy this genre of video anyway, check out Chris Remo's crossword videos. You may think nothing of them and just carry on watching the videos or stop watching them or whatever, but you might find, as I think quite a few people watching these have found, I think I could do that, and just end up giving one a go. The only problem is, apart from the US-centric nature of it, is that any good crossword I found so far, you need to subscribe to. So I have paid money to have access to the New York Times crosswords, because
sinful omission.
Because if you try and just go to any old website that claims that it has crosswords, you're probably going to have a worse time, because actually researching and setting and like editing good crosswords is a full-time job that someone needs money for. It turns out they're really hard to make. I've tried in the past to, after I started thinking about cryptic crosswords, to make them, and it's very, very difficult to find something that's going to fit in a grid in that way, even when you're just doing trying to fit every other letter, like a UK style crossword. Coming up with the clues itself, quite kind of easy, actually. Even with cryptics, it's not that hard to come up with a good cryptic clue, really. But yeah, coming up with the actual grid is a real trick. And there are all these kind of little bits of shorthand that that you pick up as you start solving these crosswords, like words that don't come up very often in life, but come up all the time in crosswords because they're like really useful, like 3-letter words that you can fit into crosses and things. Like the number of time that ode has been an answer in the last few weeks has been probably like there'd been 8 or 9 odes in the last few weeks. It's just one of those words that comes up all the time. There are lots of similar examples to that because I guess they just have this bank of useful words that they can use in crosses that have common letters in them that are going to fill a particular spot. It's still a bit of a mysterious art to me how you construct these things, but it feels like it's impressive.
Yeah, it seems interesting to me. It seems like they would be harder to do the American style because you just have such a dense network of letters that you're constantly having to come up with new words to join them all together.
Yeah, and that's why they're a lot more flexible with the sorts of things that can be answers in crosswords. So a lot of time there's kind of a clue in the clue itself that what you have to put in is an abbreviation, and sometimes there's a clue that what you're actually looking to put in is a small phrase rather than a word. They never tell you, like in regular UK style crosswords, where you see the answer split out into, say, it's like 2, 4 with, so it's a 2-letter word and then a 4-letter word. They don't give you that information in these. So from that perspective, it's a bit harder. But yeah, it can be that there are answers that are a bit slangy, answers that are abbreviations in some way, answers that are just weird in ways that you don't tend to get in UK style crosswords, because I guess they are trying to fill this grid, and so sometimes the only thing that you can fill the grid with is something a little bit weird, like an abbreviation of some sort, or some sort of strange slang word, or a foreign word. Quite a lot of foreign words end up in there as well.
This does seem to me like a thing that computers would be very good at, laying out the grid.
So there are computer assisting tools to help with this now as well. I don't know what they used to do before that was a possibility. I guess
Suffer.
Yeah. But now you can just search on a database saying, I need a word. The third, fourth, and fifth letters have to be E, H, and D. Give me something, and maybe even give me an appropriate clue for that. There's just databases of these things that you can reach for if you want. But I think the general process of the setter is to start by not doing that, and then only reach for the kind of bank of clues if they need something to fill a specific space.
For reasons of honor.
Yeah, and I think just because also something that you quite often get is a kind of little sub themes within a crossword. So you'll notice that this particular crossword has a lot of words with the same combination of 3 letters scattered around it, or something like that, and or there's like a number of crosses of words that kind of are related to each other, and that sort of thing. So they're trying to make they're trying to put little Easter eggs into the puzzle as well that make them feel a bit more crafted rather than just kind of AI generated, I guess.
Well, you realize you've painted yourself into a corner here now, because I've got the New York Times crossword here, and I'm going to ask you some of the clues, and you're gonna solve it live.
You have the New York Times crossword. Now, is it today's?
No.
What is it? Is it? Have you just gone to a random date?
Yeah, it's Tuesday, June the 16th, 2015.
Okay, Tuesday. So that's not too bad. That's just a little bit more difficult than the regular one. the only problem with this is that I don't usually do it over audio. I can usually see what I'm looking at.
Yeah. Well, you're the self-proclaimed king of crosswords now.
I don't think I claimed it. Right. So the other thing is that the other thing I forgot to mention is that I'm still a little bit bad at these, and I'm constantly frustrated by the fact that, especially after Wednesday or so, Chris Remo is solving these puzzles maybe 2 to 3 times faster than I'm solving them, while also giving a running commentary and explaining his working and occasionally just stopping to talk about something. It's infuriating.
See, I feel like you're doing all this talking so that you can look up the crossword.
All right, give me the clue.
All right, let's start you with an easy one. 7 down, 4 letters. Throw away part of an apple.
Cool.
All right. It doesn't tell me whether it's right or not. So, what is the point of doing this?
You can't. You're gonna break your streak by doing it, I think, but you can turn on. There's a menu option somewhere to turn on auto check, so that it will automatically tell you if you got it right or not. But I don't tend to use that.
Hey, what do you know? Core was correct.
Mm-hmm.
All right. 33 down, 3 letters. University wall covering.
3 letters.
Yeah.
University wall covering. I don't see that one immediately.
Okay. About 38 down.
What is it?
8 letters. Prankster's weapon.
8 letters. My initial thought would have been slingshot, but I think that's 9 letters.
What's another name for it? What's another name for a slingshot?
I feel like it's on the tip of my tongue. See, what I will usually do, my process, is if I'm not seeing the answer straight away, I will just move on. And by the time that I've done this across the whole grid, I will have a number of clues provided to me by the ones that I filled in, right? I'll have a number of letters filled out.
Yeah, we understand that this is asking you to do it under unusual pressure.
Yeah, I can't see it. It's very difficult when I can't see it. If I can't visualize it in front of me, it's very odd.
It was catapult.
Catapult. Thank you. Yeah.
All right. Let's do a couple more before we get bored of this section. 6 letters. Ballpark offering.
Does it have a question mark in it?
No.
Okay. If it has a question mark in it, and this is true for cryptics as well, it means that they're being a little bit cheeky, and there's maybe some kind of weird pun or wordplay involved. Ballpark offering. And how many letters? Sorry.
6 letters.
It's probably something like hot dog or something like that.
Yes, it was hot dog.
Yeah.
Well done. All right, we got 2 more for you.
Okay.
Blank disturb, 5 letters.
Do not.
Yeah, well done. I thought you'd appreciate an easy one.
Okay, what's the last one?
And the final one, because I was looking at it and I was like, what? 3 letters. Its head is in a bucket often.
Head is in a bucket. You could sort of put a drunk person's head in a bucket, I guess. Or they could do that to throw up. Sometimes one of these words that comes up sometimes in crosswords is sot.
No.
So it's going for something else. Its head is in a bucket. So it's maybe not a person, then its head is in a bucket.
I think this is the hardest one in the list.
What I should do is just keep on thinking about this one through our ensuing conversation about Alien.
Oh, all right.
And so that I won't be listening to you properly, and instead I'll be thinking about what this clue.
Well, no change there then.
Head is in a bucket. What do you put? Mop.
Yes, well done. Well done. I'm very pleased. Oh, okay, cool. I think you did very well there, especially since we put you entirely on the spot.
Yeah. So you see, like with that clue, the clues are just a little bit playful, and you have to think a bit about what it might mean. It's maybe not the obvious sense of the word, so I kind of like that about them.
Well, that's definitely enough talking about crosswords for one day.
All right, I'm glad I got to talk about it because, as I say, it's not something that I ever would have predicted I would be interested in getting into in any way, but I found myself kind of pleasantly surprised by these.
Speaking of puzzles, what I've been up to recently is actually, I'm going to circle back to this because there's something I need to say here about crosswords. Well, anyway, you say that you're using crosswords to help you sleep, and Kieran's advice for sleep is get yourself all cozy, turn off all the lights, and then buy yourself an audiobook from our sponsor for this episode, Audible. What?
Now, I don't think, unless there's something that you are not telling me, they have sponsored this episode.
How does sponsorship work? Because I just assumed that you just said something and then you asked for money. Is that not how it works?
I don't think you just say you're sponsored and then they have to give you money. I feel like that's backwards.
Do you think I can get them on the phone and ask if they'll give us some money for this podcast?
I mean, I certainly think you can try.
We have listener figures. They're not very high.
Yeah,
but they certainly exist.
I'm sure they'll be very attracted by our low listener figures.
Okay, so it isn't sponsored because they won't give me any money, but I do listen to a lot of Audible audiobooks. And that's how I get to sleep. I make it nice and dark. I put on the audiobook that I'm listening to at the moment, and I set the sleep timer on it, and then 15 minutes later it goes to sleep. And it works. I almost always drift off to sleep listening to this, and it silences the terrifying voices in my mind just long enough that I can fall asleep. I know people who listen to new audiobooks that like books they haven't read or heard before when they're using audiobooks to sleep, and I cannot do that because if it's something new or something exciting, it will hold my attention the entire time through.
And I do listen to new audiobooks. I listen to audiobooks where I haven't necessarily read the book first. I enjoy reading books in that format. I just seem to take it in better a lot of the time because I'm a bit of a skimmer when I read, and I find that it's easier as long as I'm engaged to pay attention when I'm listening to an audiobook than it is for me to when I'm reading. I'll end up just kind of skimming and getting the gist and not even really realizing that I'm doing it until I look back over the last couple of pages and notice that there are loads of details in the last couple of pages that I wasn't even paying any attention to. But I agree, I wouldn't do that going to sleep for the first time because I would be worried about missing stuff. Like even last night, for a change, I actually put on some audio before going to sleep, but it was a podcast that I hadn't listened to before, and even then, I put it on a sleep timer for about 20 minutes because I didn't want to miss too much of the podcast. And if I knew I was falling asleep, I know I'd just have no idea where I was when I picked up the book again.
It's interesting. It's sort of the other way around for me because I get into it and I just cannot stop listening to it. So I stay awake. My brain won't let me go to sleep. My favorite sleep audiobook, I'm not going to call it a bedtime story, despite that clearly being what it is The Martian by Andy Weir. There was an original version of the audiobook that came out, I think in 2015, narrated by R.C. Bray, and he just he blows it away. It's really, really, really good audiobook. It's actually not available anymore because Podium Publishing lost the license to it, which means Audible lost the license to it. So if you don't have that audiobook, I guess you can never have it. So, sorry. But if you have already bought it off Audible, you can still re-download it from them. They have a license to download them forever. I guess it's just not listed in their catalog anymore.
Right.
And it's just such a good thing. But because I know it so well, I must have heard the story 100 times now, more probably. I can always just listen to him talking, and it's like we were saying about the Crosswords. It's just something soothing to listen to, and you go to sleep. There is a little downside to using the book, though. There are 3 or 4 really exciting bits, and if I'm in those bits, if it starts playing and it's one of those bits, I have to skip through it, because I can't. If I lie there listening to it, I'll listen to the exciting bit where he gets rescued, or spoilers, or the the bit where the hab explodes.
Yeah,
and I just don't go to sleep.
I think this approach to sleep really works for you anyway, because I feel like you are the sort of person who is a big, I don't know what the kind of umbrella term for this would be, but you like to re-watch things, replay things, reread things. You do that quite a lot. So you, as we've talked about before, you watch The Thing a whole lot.
I do.
You when was the last time you watched The Thing?
Last Sunday.
Right, yeah. So very recently, like you might think, if you're listening, like even if something is one of your favorite films, it might be some time since you watched it, because you know it very well. You don't need to watch it all the time, but I feel like as a person, you enjoy watching or reading or listening to things over and over again, which is nothing wrong with that. It's just a different approach to how I tend to approach things. Most of the time, I will play a game once, and I'm unlikely to touch it again, at least for a number of years. Or I'll read a book once, and I won't read it again for a long time, if at all, even if I really enjoyed it. And films, obviously, occasionally, it doesn't take long to get through a film, so I'll occasionally rewatch a film that I enjoy, but even something that I would say is one of my favorite films, like Back to the Future, there must have been some years where I didn't watch that,
Presumably the ones between your birth and it being released.
Well, there aren't many of those, to be honest. But yeah, but also since then, definitely there have been long stretches where I haven't gone back to it. Thought about it occasionally, but haven't actually done it. I'm just not a very avid. This is a terrible word, but I'm going to go with it for now because I can't think of a better one. Re-consumer of things.
Yes. Tints of coprophagy. Thank you so much. Maybe workshop that one a bit more during this podcast. I do know what you mean, though. It's an interesting thing to me because it came up quite recently on Twitter, right? And I did a little poll, and I got sort of split 50-50 answers between people who like reabsorbing media, like rereading books, like re-listening to albums, re-watching TV and film shows that you've enjoyed, and people who are just like, no, I must always seek out a new thing to slake my content thirst. And it came out about 50-50 on people who rewatch and people who don't rewatch. And the thing that set all this off, and my curiosity about it, was there was one of those meme images going around on Twitter, and it was like post a GIF from a film that you've seen 5 times. And I was like, 5 whole times. Wow.
Yeah.
There are films that I fucking despise that I have seen 5 times. 5 times is an absurdly low threshold.
Yeah. But yet, if you asked me to name films that I've seen 5 times, it would have to be either stuff that I just watched a lot as a small child, because that was what was available on
Yes.
the VHS tapes, or it would be my absolute favorite thing. So yeah, I've definitely seen Back to the Future in my life a lot more than 5 times, but probably I'm going to go out on a limb and say I might not have seen it 50 times.
See, it's just such a weird thing to me, because I was looking at it, I was like, right, okay, I've seen Prometheus, a film I really don't like, at least 5 times. I've seen Alien and The Thing and Aliens collectively. I would say probably it's got to be in the high hundreds. It's got to be in, like, if you add them all up, like all 3 movies, it's probably 1,000 times between them. I'm like,
sure.
And that doesn't feel weird to me. I enjoy them. Watching them makes me happy. Why? Why is rewatching them apparently so unusual?
Well, and I think the reason actually is that there is, for some people, and I guess not for everyone, the law of diminishing returns is much stronger.
Yeah.
So even with a film that I really love, like Back to the Future, I will not watch it too often because I will get bored of it after a while. I will tire of seeing it after a while, and then I need to kind of spend some time away from it, recharge those batteries a bit, and then I'll watch it and I will enjoy it again. But there is a little cheap method for replenishing your enjoyment of this, which I have discovered in recent years.
Oh, yeah.
And I think explains the popularity on YouTube and things like that of reaction videos now, which is that if you watch something that you really like with someone who hasn't seen it before, it suddenly feels a little bit like watching it for the first time again, because, and it's the same with like listening to music and things like that. For some reason, when you do this, you are watching it differently. You're watching it in a kind of empathetic way, with the other person or people that you're with in mind, so that it becomes easier to notice all of the things that you've kind of taken for granted about that piece of media. And I think that explains why sometimes in kind of my idle moments, I will find myself drifting towards a reaction channel. I find someone who I don't find too annoying reacting to something on YouTube, and just enjoy their responses to something that I'm quite familiar with. I do that sometimes with Let's Plays of games. I like watching the ones where they haven't played it before much more than I enjoy watching the ones where they have done.
Blind plays of games are pretty good.
Yeah, and it's just because you just get that little flavor of playing it for the first time that you can never do that again, but you can sort of access someone else's experiences of that. It's a little way of getting a sense of what it was like to play it or watch it for the first time again.
Should we mention that that's sort of the concept of this podcast?
Yeah, why not? We could get on topic. We could.
Well, that feels like a little touching of on topic, because I still want to talk about my thing that I've been doing recently.
Yes.
I have been playing a game called We Were Here Together. And I know that you know that I've been playing that game because I was playing it with you.
You were playing it with me because it is a co-op only game.
2-player online co-op. And we're not going to go too much into this. I like the setup of the game, obviously, because it's set in a sort of creepy Antarctic base, and hey, the thing and all that. Let's not get into that. But it's a puzzle game, and as we were playing it and talking about it last night, you said something quite funny about the realism of the puzzles involved.
Right, yeah, so I was not quite prepared for how much of a gamey game it was in the sense of, well, for example, quite early on in the game, there is this sequence where you are trying to get into a mine, and the way that you have to do this is by operating these series of elevators. And but pairs of elevators which have symbols on them are connected to each other. So when one elevator goes up, the other corresponding elevator goes down. And so the way that you're supposed to solve this is to be in separate parts of this elevator system, making each other go up and down in a specific way so that you can navigate this kind of elevator maze to get to the entrance in what I would call a system that would cause every single worker at that base to quit immediately.
I just like the idea that the miners turn up like first thing in the morning. They spend a solid 7 hours getting into the mine. Then they have to mine as quickly as possible for half an hour, and then the day's over.
They change the elevator puzzle every day.
No memorizing it, and of course, because there are only 2 of them, it only lets 2 people in at a time.
Right? Yes, of course. So it's very. It's not presented to be. It's definitely got a story to it that you're supposed to be following. But it's, I guess, not in a way that particularly bothers me, but it is slightly at odds with the way that the puzzles work, which are in no way something that you would encounter in life.
Yeah, video games taught me that I'd be using colored key cards a lot more often than, in fact, I have in real life.
Yeah. I mean, even right at the beginning of the game, before you've really got into the puzzles, the first thing that you have to do is find a series of cranks which are all shaped in a slightly different way that only work on one particular door, and for some reason are scattered in unusual places throughout your base that apparently you work at. So in order to get to the places that you need to go in order to reach that mine area that we were talking about. So the framing of the puzzles is a bit unusual, but if you kind of suspend your disbelief a bit and just accept that it's going to be that kind of game, it was been quite enjoyable so far. Very tricky, but quite enjoyable.
See, I quite like that first puzzle with the various cranks because it reminded me of the rooster key bullshit from Resident Evil 2.
Right.
And one of my favorite things recently is them having to retcon this and come up with a justification for how fucking insane the locking system is in the police station by explaining it away that it used to be an art museum, which explains all the art everywhere as well. And it was built by someone who was a bit loony. So,
right, because back when these games were made, you could people accepted that there was going to be these just kind of ridiculous pockets of logic in games, because that's just what games did. They weren't expected that the playing of it was not really supposed to feel like real life in any way, I guess. But as storytelling in games has just got a little bit more sophisticated, and the it's become less kind of fashionable to have this disconnect between the play and the telling of the story. It sticks out. It really sticks out when there's a kind of disconnect between those two things. And so I'm not surprised. I haven't played the new remasters of the Resident Evil games, but it doesn't surprise me that they did something to just make that a bit more, make the player buy into that a bit more.
Well, okay, we're about an hour into this hour-long podcast talking about Alien, and we haven't started talking about Alien yet. So, should we introduce the concept? This is a podcast. Maybe we should... The executive decision, maybe we should bump the concept up to the head of the podcast before we talk about other shit for an hour.
All right. I like that.
So,
because then we could also mention that also we're going to ramble on about some random shit for probably up to an hour before we actually get to Alien.
So the concept of this podcast that you're now a solid hour into is that we are going to talk about the movie Alien. We've cut it up into little 8-minute chunks. Why 8 minutes? Because it was a number that I liked. And we're going to watch it and talk about those bits. I've seen Alien a lot, as we mentioned just before now. Mm-hmm. And Peter has seen it. Have you seen it 5 times, Peter?
I am not confident that I have properly watched it 5 times, but I think I've probably at least had it on in the background up to 5 times in the past.
I feel like I've dragged you to the cinema to see it at least twice.
Yeah, I think I've done that twice. I think I've watched it at your house properly once, and probably watched it in the background a couple more times as well. And actually, that is why this part of the film is a bit fuzzier to me, because when I just have it on in the background, this is probably the part of the film where I start switching off a little bit and paying attention to other things, which is counterintuitive maybe because it's getting quite exciting at this point. But
you've just had 2 killings, you can wind down for a bit.
Yeah, I'm really all in it for the chest bursting. Once that's happened, I just tune out. I don't care what happens to anyone else.
I did say it was all downhill from here. So this is the part of the podcast that's called Let's Not Talk About the Thing, where I will talk about something that's kind of related to Alien, but may not be directly from the film. Maybe it's the extended universe. Maybe it's the novels. Who knows? What is it, Peter?
I don't know, because you come up with this and I am not informed what it's going to be in advance. So genuinely, what do you have for us this time?
I'm going to talk to you about Alien Isolation.
Now this is something that I know you are a big fan of.
Yes. Although, to be honest, you can slap the Alien logo on almost anything and I'll buy it. I do like Alien Isolation a lot.
I think it's fair to say there have been better and worse Alien games.
Oh boy, yes.
And this is one that is maybe still a little bit divisive. I know it's not universally popular, but it has its fans, and you are one of them.
So, just to get back to basic concepts then, Alien Isolation is a 2014 survival horror video game developed by Creative Assembly and published by Sega. The game is set 15 years after the events of the 1979 film Alien, and follows engineer Amanda Ripley, daughter of Alien protagonist Ellen Ripley, as she investigates the disappearance of her mother. So, Amanda Ripley isn't mentioned in Alien at all, but she is mentioned in Aliens in the extended cut that many people have. It's called the special edition, but it's what most people have seen. She's Ripley's daughter, and she dies of old age at the age of 67 or something like that. somewhere on Earth, and Ripley never gets to see her again because she was away from Earth for so long.
Right.
We've sort of spoiled the ending of the movie Alien there, but I think we've said time and time again, this isn't a watch-along podcast. You should have seen the movie.
Yeah.
So Amanda goes with some people from Weyland-Yutani to a Freeport space station called Sevastopol, which is run by a different company called Seegson. And they go there because a ship has found the Nostromo's flight recorder unit and brought it to Seegson. But by the time they arrive at Sevastopol, everything has gone wrong, and they can't dock because the space dock is damaged. So they do a spacewalk across to get on board, and as they do the spacewalk, they're all separated, and Amanda ends up wandering the ship alone.
So that's the setup, and I have seen this game being played occasionally by you, and just online a little bit. I think the game looks very cool. I would not play it myself, but mainly because I think it would stress me the fuck out.
Yeah, it is a very sweaty palms game, and one of my notes here is it's one of my favorite games, but I've only ever played it once.
So this goes against your general rule of doing things a lot of times.
I have actually watched a lot of people play it. Like I tend to seek out new blind plays of it and watch them because it's funny when they do the screams.
This is all great. We're bringing it right back round. It turns out the stuff we were talking about before was extremely relevant to us.
This is fantastic. I don't have to do any editing today at all. I played it once on hard all the way through, and then a couple of times I've sort of picked at it. I've got like a level or two in, and then I'm like, oh, what do you know? I've got something else to do. It's not that I'm scared. I'm just busy.
Yeah, and it's not, a lot of times, it's not the scare factor of games, although I imagine this game would be quite scary to play. But it's just it's more the stress of it. I mean, we were talking a couple of episodes ago about Barotrauma, a game which I do like the idea of in concept, but the couple of times that I played it, I found just really stressful to play, and I don't like. I feel like if it was a single player game, I'd just maybe deal with it a bit more. But in that kind of multiplayer setting, I don't want to be that stressed out with other people around me as well. I guess in this one, I think I'd just have to be in the right mood to be to play this, to really kind of want to be that stressed out by this game and just really take my time with it.
So, carry on with my description. Unlike previous game adaptations of the Alien franchise, Alien Isolation places an emphasis on stealth and survival horror gameplay, requiring the player to avoid and outsmart a single alien creature with tools such as a motion tracker and a flamethrower. It was designed to resemble the original film rather than its more action-oriented 1986 sequel Aliens, and features a similar lo-fi 1970s vision of what the future would look like. I actually know a thing that Creative Assembly did while they were making this was sort of ban...
Ding. Sorry, I've got a ding.
Go find the bell.
Ding.
I know a segment that Creative Assembly did while making this was to ban the members of the studio from watching the film Aliens. Because it's got such a different aesthetic than the original film, or like the design team. And they actually had Alien on a loop in the studio on a monitor. So it was just playing the movie over and over again, just so they could sort of soak in it all the time.
I don't know whether I like that or not. That just feels like it could just become slightly maddening after a while.
I wonder if they've seen it more than 100 times. It was originally designed as a third-person game, but they found first-person was much more intense, so they switched to that.
I can see that. You don't see immediately if there's something behind you, even though you don't have a lot of view behind you in a third-person game, it feels like you're a bit more aware of your surroundings, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, I think when you're in a third-person game, it's quite clear it's not you. It's someone else. But if you're first person, then it's whatever it is happening to you. You know, despite the fact that the character's female or whatever, and like they have different skin tone or whatever to you, like you have become that person by putting you in their point of view.
Sure.
Alien Isolation received generally positive reviews and had sold over 2 million copies in 2015. Critics praised the game's retro-futuristic art direction, sound design, and the alien's artificial intelligence, but criticized its characters and length. The game won several year-end awards, including Best Audio at the Game Developers' Choice Awards and Audio Achievement of the 2015 BAFTA Awards.
It always seemed like it was really well put together in the way that it evoked the look and the sounds of the film that we're watching at the moment.
It's actually like being there. It's great. Like sometimes when playing it, I wish there was a way to turn off the alien and just bask. You know what I mean? Just to be in the environment that they've provided for you.
Yeah, and even though I've said in the past that generally speaking, Aliens has been the film that I've enjoyed more. I do appreciate them going for this original Alien sort of idea because it feels like a much better, not better, a much trickier design challenge to make a single monster be that threatening throughout the course. And there are other games that have tried that. I feel like Resident Evil 3 is a game that
you're thinking of the Nemesis,
yeah. But this is, I think the approach here is a bit different to that.
The only other enemy, I guess, that kind of matches that is in Dead Space. There's a necromorph that you can't kill that chases you throughout one of the levels, and you have to like trap it and freeze it in some sort of science ice cube.
And actually, weirdly enough, in the new Ratchet and Clank game, they have a segment where there is a monster that you can't kill that stalks you.
Ratchet is Isaac Clarke confirmed. They're both engineers, actually.
True.
Shit. And the game's about going through dimensions. Have we just attached like the Dead Space universe and the Ratchet and Clank universe?
They're definitely they definitely seemed to be going for a sort of, we're going to slightly do a horror section, but in a way that will still be fine for kids, sort of sort of thing in the latest Ratchet and Clank.
Oh damn you! I want to check this out even more now. I hope I get a PS5 before the heat death of the universe. Alien Isolation again. The Alien AI, which is quite hard to say. The Alien AI is very interesting as it works as two separate systems. One which acts as an overall director, which knows where the player is, and one which is attached to the alien itself and doesn't know where the player is, but it gives it a couple of sensory cones so that it can see things in front of it, hear things near it, and sense things that touch it. The governor system keeps the alien in the general area of the player, so like periodically it'll let you rest, but then occasionally it will nudge the alien back in your general direction. But crucially, it won't pass on exactly where it is. The alien has to find you.
Right.
There's a number of little noises the alien makes, and there's definitely hisses, which mean, I've seen you. And hearing those when you think you're hidden is terrifying. You can hide from the alien in lockers and under desks and things. On higher difficulties, it will open lockers and things looking for you, which is a bit, especially if you make a slight noise. Another fun thing from the like makers of the game. Early on, like they added a debugging feature to the alien where instead of using these hisses and stuff, it would just say out loud using one of the developers' voices what it was doing. So it would be walking around going, "I am hunting you. I am hunting you. I have found you." Which is more creepy to me.
They should have definitely left that in as like a cheat or something.
Another feature of the game, if you're insane, is that you can turn the microphone on, like in your controller in the PS4, or like in your Kinect if you had one, or just your general PC one. And if it's on, then the alien can hear you yourself. So if you make a loud noise, it will come and look at you. And this feature, I guess, is fine if you live alone. The only time I've heard of it being used, a friend of mine played it with that mode on, and he was playing it on like a projector screen, so it's quite a big screen, and he was hiding from the alien. His housemate walked in, saw it on the screen, screamed with fright, and then the alien turned around and killed him, and they never went back to playing the game ever again.
Yeah, I was going to say, I could never have the microphone on, because what would happen is that I'd be playing it, keeping very quiet, and then Ash would burst in from the other room, and I'd be dead.
Yeah, the alien is very scary, and like the first time you encounter it, really, it kills a bunch of people in a giant room that you're in, and it starts stalking you as well. And there's not much cover in there, and you don't have any weapons or anything. The weapons in the game don't do anything. Like, they do not affect the alien in any way, but like having them is strangely comforting. Right. And I remember the first time I played it, I was like, I'd heard it stalking off and stuff, and I had a clear run to the door, and I was like, right, it's gone. It's the other side of the room. I haven't heard it for a while. I'm gonna run to the door and get through the door, and it won't get me. And literally, as I was just about to do it, its tail flopped down in front of me, and it was standing on the other side of the planter that I was hiding behind, and I just hadn't heard it because it had stalked up quietly, and I'm like, oh my god. So yeah, it is pretty terrifying, but weirdly, you can come to regard it as a sort of pet later in the game, because there are three sorts of enemies you'll encounter in the game, one of which is other humans who are all desperate to try and get off the station and will kill you pretty much on sight. But they're firing their guns will attract the alien. So if you're being shot at by somebody, one of the best tactics to do is just hide and wait for your friend the alien to turn up, maul them to death, and then then you'll be like, thanks, bud, but like really quiet, because otherwise he'll kill you. I had another experience like that while playing it for the first time, where I thought the alien was very far away, and I was like jogging quickly back to a save point, and like I turned into a door, and the door slid open. It was just standing behind the door, and I was like, I'm not going to be able to close this door fast enough, am I? And it was like, no. It is telling something for the game that you do try and run in that situation, but you can't run. I've tried everything. You dive into a vent and it drags you out by your feet. I have played it in VR actually as well, and I played it for about 4 minutes.
Yeah, I was going to say this seems like it would pose several problems for you. So you famously get motion sick.
Yeah, very bad motion sick. I played Elite Dangerous in VR once for 10 seconds because I did a barrel roll, and then I made myself physically sick. But yeah, the alien, particularly scary in VR.
Yeah. It also just seems like it would be very stressful. I've been kind of wanting to play Resident Evil 7, which apparently has a good VR mode, but for similar reasons, I really need to be in the right mood to do that, because when you're in VR, you're very much locked into that ecosystem. You're committed to that, and so there's not many situations where I think to myself, you know what, I would like to be severely stressed out for the next couple of hours.
The other enemy in the game, because I was wondering when they released it how they were going to bulk it out, because like, you know, you can't be up against the alien constantly every couple of minutes because it will lose its horror, right? I mean, it'll just be like an annoying pest quite quickly.
Yeah.
So the other thing in the game that they've added are creepy androids called Working Joes that are obviously Siegson has been trying to copy Wayland Yutani's human-like androids without much success. So they just have a creepy blank face and they all talk with the same voice.
Right.
And they will kill you on sight as well because they've got mysterious orders to do that. Ooh. And again, one of my favorite moments of playing this game was so I'm in a vent watching one of these androids walking around, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I've got my motion tracker that will tell me, where the alien is. And I'm stuck in like one big section of the map that's all sort of interconnected. And this android is walking around like doing maintenance on things. So I can't tell which of the dots on the motion tracker is the android and which is the alien. And I was like, right, okay, I'm going to deal with this android. I'm going to get it out of the way so that I can track only the alien. I won't be confused. This seems like a great idea to me.
Mm-hmm.
So I stepped out of the vent and I was like, you can't shoot the androids because it kills them very quickly, but the noise of the gunshot will summon the alien almost immediately.
Yeah.
And you don't have enough time to not get lunched.
Right.
So I was like, right, I'll flamethrower him. I've got a flamethrower.
Mm-hmm.
So I stepped out of the vent and I flamethrowered this android, and he slowly turned around to face me, and he said, I have been designed to withstand temperatures of up to 3,000 degrees Celsius, and he pulled my head off. The horror comedy of it was just absurd. I loved it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's finally all I have to say about Alien Isolation. I know we went on a bit, but it is a great game. If you can pick it up, play it. I mean, it's pretty cheap now. I think it was on sale for like £1, like not too long ago.
Yeah, very gettable as a game now.
But also a bit spoopy.
So, does this take us to the reason that we are gathered here today?
Yes and indeed no. So normally here we introduce the game with the bells, but you know what? You know how it works. We ring the bell if something bad happens, if we get frightened, or if one of us says today's secret swear word, we ring the bell. That's the rules, definitely.
So if for some reason you are joining us on this episode, where are we, 10?
This is episode 10, which if you take into account the 10 episodes of the previous season and this one, you would be 20 episodes in, learning this part of the podcast mechanic for the first time. So stop it.
But if you're just maybe curious about this podcast and you want to check out the latest and presumably best episode of it, and you've come in now, then tough luck. You can just guess what the reason we ring the bell is at this point. If that is genuinely what you are doing, let us know if you figure it out.
I was going to say, assuming this is the latest and best episode is a bold assumption.
Oh, yeah.
So you asked me in the precedent episode, where are the alien costumes now? And I was totally blindsided by that. I didn't have a fucking clue.
Yeah.
And it was kind of a fun little detective adventure figuring that out.
How did you do?
Okay. So I can't track them all down because they aren't really differentiated. Like, there are 3 costumes and they all went to different places. But one of them went on sale in 2007 and sold for, how much do you think it sold for?
I'm going to say $150,000.
That's pretty close. $126,500. One of them is on permanent display in the Giga Museum in Gruyere, and it was briefly on loan to the Deutsche Filminstitut Film Museum in Frankfurt. That's a lot of Fs. One of them is indeed at Mopop, which is formerly known as the EMP in Seattle, and I do have a picture of me with it. And one... so that's 3, but one sold recently at auction. Gasp, a 4th one. And it was one of the translucent prototypes that we mentioned last time. That they it is in a fair state. It doesn't look brilliant. Like the ass is missing, where the tail would attach, but they either didn't mold the tail or it didn't go on, and a lot of the rubber on the chest sort of area is perished as well. But
still crawling with maggots.
Oh god, yeah. But an absolutely priceless thing, prop thing. If you were interested in the movie, it ended up selling for about $60,000.
Okay.
It's interesting that it's lower than one of the screen used suits, but I guess just maybe it doesn't have the same appeal as something that's literally seen on screen in the movie. I've got this sort of private theory about buying props from films and TV shows, right? And that if it's worth doing if like so you show it to someone and you don't have to explain what it is for more than a minute.
Right.
Right. So if they see it and they go, "Is that the alien from Alien?" and you go, "Yes," then great. But if they see it and they go, "What's that?" and you go, "It's the bulkhead ladder from Deck C of the Nostromo in Alien," that's pushing.
Yeah, if you do a prop and you're like, "Oh, this is Mr. Fusion from Back to the Future," that's fair enough. If you're like, "This is the same machine that was used as a very background prop in Alien," then it doesn't quite fly in the same way, does it?
No, and it does sort of sound like showing off, but like you do want the things that people recognize from stuff. I actually, do you remember the movie Sunshine?
Yes, I do.
So a lot of the production happened here in England, and they sold a whole bunch of the props from it on eBay afterwards. I think they were for charity. I can't remember. And I almost ended up with two, and I was snipe bidded at the last moment, which made me pretty sad. And the two I was bidding on were there's a bit where one of the characters gets trapped in runs into an airlock just after he's been stabbed, and he pulls the airlock handle to shut it behind him, and it's all covered in blood, and like it was that airlock handle.
Right.
And I was like, wow, because that's recognizable. That's what they call a hero prop. Like it's a thing they've interacted with. Like it's got some screens, like some in focus screen time. I was sort of really excited, but I lost it last minute. And the other one, sort of more weirdly, there's a bit where one of the characters freezes to death in the vacuum of space.
Okay.
And they sold his corpse. And I sort of bidded on it as a joke. But then I was like, well, maybe I could have it. And then after a while, I was like, what would I do with this? Where will I put it?
Yeah, where would you put it? You'd have to sleep with it.
No, I'd put it in the bathroom. I'd put it in the bath, I think. Just to raise the number of questions I get asked. Oh dear.
Imagine like just forgetting you'd done that and then having guests around.
Oh god. Well, it's like those people who own standees, I guess. Because your brain goes, oh, there's a full-size human being there, and oh god. Christ, here we go. 6 hours in, we're gonna start talking about Alien. Great, fantastic. Last time you said who's infected, and you said nobody.
The ship, I guess.
The ship. You said the ship. What happens next? You said there's a misdirection. Dallas isn't going to die next, so it's going to be Lambert or Parker or both of them.
So we'll get into it a bit during this next segment, but I'm still not ready to say that Dallas is a goner just yet. I don't exactly remember what happens next, or if I'm getting it confused with the next film, which is entirely possible as well. But I feel like we encounter Dallas again in the future. So it may still be that one of those two or both of them are the next to get killed.
That's an interesting memory of yours that we'll have to address later. Well, all right, that aside, let's start watching Alien. Okay, so we're going to be covering 1 hour and 12 minutes to 1 hour and 20 minutes of Alien. As always, not a watch-along podcast. You should have seen the movie by now. I know who you are. I'm taking your names. You're not on my Christmas card list anymore. I'm going to read out some action points, which are a little bulleted point that summarizes some action on the screen of some time. And if we want to talk about it, we will. So let's get started. Dallas continues to crawl through the vents, accompanied by beeping.
Now, just immediately, this looks very uncomfortable to me. It seems like it would be hell on your knees, which is, I guess, the sort of thing that I now think about as I approach my 40s. Like, that's gonna hurt for a couple of days afterwards.
You think Tom Skerritt has knee pads on under his jeans, or I'm not sure if we mentioned it before, but Harrison Ford actually turned down the role of Dallas. The tight production budget only let them build a single 30-foot-long tube for this vent sequence with a T-junction at the end. And Ridley Scott and Derek Van Lint constantly had to keep changing the lights and angles to make it look like there's more of the vent system than in fact there is. So here you're seeing pretty much all of it.
Yeah, I think it works fine. It didn't read that way to me. So
yeah, no, they did a really good job. You can't tell that it's only one tube shot from a number of different angles.
It's quite common, really, isn't it, to reuse a space?
Yeah,
to make it seem like it's more than it is in films. I'm always kind of fascinated when that comes up.
I know they try and do it less now because, especially in low-budget sci-fi, there is a tendency to have someone walk down a corridor and then walk down the same corridor from a different angle, and you're like, get 2 corridors, losers. Dallas has the crew open a hatch, and he crawls inside. So these scenes are lit only by the flamethrower itself. So here and in some of the other flamethrower scenes later, Derek Van Lint, the cinematographer, had to keep the actors moving the flamethrowers closer to their faces to get them correctly lit by the pilot light. Which he said they weren't that keen on, but they they did their jobs.
Yeah.
Lambert sees the alien on the tracker and guides Dallas towards it.
And quite a lot of times during this next number of shots, we get a quick look back at Ash watching during this whole segment. And again, he's got an odd look on his face. He's not quite smiling, but he's almost smiling. There's a kind of a fascinated look on his face.
Yeah, I would say he sort of it's an I know something you don't know look.
Yeah, he wants to know what the alien will do. I don't think that he expects this to end well for Dallas.
No,
but he doesn't seem to mind. He's just interested.
Dallas reaches the junction where Lambert said she saw the alien and test fires his flamethrower down there. So Ridley Scott and one of the camera technicians were very nervous in this scene as they're in the tube with him, filming him, and he has to sweep the active flamethrower past them. And if he accidentally pressed the firing stud, they would have been barbecued alive. Fortunately, that didn't happen. Dallas climbs down and looks around as Lambert loses the alien's position. So a lot of people have a go at Lambert, but it's really hard to read anything on that motion tracker screen. Whenever it cuts back to it, I have no idea what it's supposed to be showing. So I don't feel like you should be harsh on Lambert for losing the alien's position.
I'm not harsh on her at this moment because I feel like it's fair enough. It might be that at this moment in time, the alien is just very, very still. That's how I kind of interpreted this moment, is that the alien knows that it's being tracked in some ways, figured it out that it's being tracked in some way, and is remaining still in order to lure them closer in some way or confuse them.
In the script, they're actually just one level apart from each other, and there's like a mesh flooring separating them, and the alien sort of reaches up and gently strokes his boot through it, but he doesn't notice. Which was creepy, but they didn't shoot it in the end. So
I think this works better. You just don't know where the alien is in this moment. It's quite tense.
Dallas accidentally puts his hand in some slime and looks down at it curiously. So this is the same goo we've seen our alien friend making before. If only Dallas knew about it. He doesn't seem to be expecting it, so maybe he knows he's in terrible danger? Who knows?
We seem to suspect it in the last part anyway.
Dallas looks around in confusion. Then the alien reappears on the tracker, moving right towards him.
So I feel like at this point, Lambert could have given him like a direction. Maybe that's my takeaway from this. She says it's coming straight towards you, and then has quite a lot of time, it looks like, to say or figure out what direction that's coming from, and he just kind of hangs around there. And she eventually does tell him to move, but there's a very kind of lengthy pause that I guess we'll get to in the next section, which I think that moment could have possibly been handled a bit better. That's my takeaway from it.
I don't know. I mean, it does seem like if something is stationary on that thing, it's really hard to tell what the other dot is doing in relation to it. So if he had moved, maybe she would have been able to say, no, you're going towards it more, go the other way. I think just the fact that he's stationary and it's moving is what's causing the confusion.
Maybe it's harder to interpret than I thought, but I guess the way that it moves when it starts moving, I figured that she would be able to say, oh, it's coming from blah direction. But maybe it's more complicated than that. But it just felt like there's a big gap where it's still a decent distance away, where he could have started moving earlier.
So when are we making this as an async co-op game? Vent Guider. We've actually sort of been beaten to the punch by Alien Isolation itself, which has a DLC pack called Crew Expendable, which places you on the Nostromo as either Ripley or Dallas while the events of Alien are unfolding. And one of the things you can do is go into the vents with Lambert guiding you. And do you know what? I've never completed that section of the game because the alien always gets you. I'm like, I feel like you are able to complete it. I don't think Lambert is giving you the best advice.
Even today, Lambert just letting you down.
Oh God. Lambert panically begs him to move, and he climbs down a ladder. Dallas swings his lamp to and fro, and as it turns, the alien springs its arms wide. This has always struck me, like, you know, it's attacking him, but it's always struck me as weird because it just looks like it wants a hug.
Does a bit, doesn't it?
Like that's what I would do when I was 5 and I wanted a hug.
And people were just as scared.
Fuck you. So this death went back and forth quite a few times as well during the production.
So you're calling it a death?
Yeah, well, we'll get to it. Like, Dallas is just missing. I think we should mark him down as MIA for now.
Yeah, okay.
But this eventuality went back and forth a few times in the production. Originally, this set was supposed to be like a giant wind tunnel with fans at the end. And he'd turn this way, and the alien would run down the walls and grab him. But that was much too expensive to film at this point. So they had to go with the 30-meter long tunnel they already had, which presented them with extra problems because Balahi Badeo in the alien costume was too big to fit into fit into it. So what you're seeing there is a 5-foot stuntman in a smaller alien costume grabbing Dallas. So that's why the scene, like, it has the surprise, but like not as much of the motion as you would expect, because like it does look like he's just giving him a hug, but the guy really is just kind of stuck there.
Yeah.
Dallas cuts to static and white noise. So again, this is kind of iconic and has become reused in Alien Isolation. Every time you die, you hear the alien scream, and then it fades to static, which sort of squeals and fades out exactly like Dallas's death.
Right.
Which was a really nice touch. I liked it. The crew cry out for him, looking devastated. We cut to Parker slamming a flamethrower on the table. They found it, but not Dallas. So yeah, as we just mentioned, he's missing. They found no blood. So what happened to him?
Yeah. So what I'm remembering, and what's making me just hesitate for a moment before saying that he's definitely dead at this point, is, and I don't know whether this is something that only comes up in the second film. I know that they do sometimes just kind of capture people, and I know this definitely is a thing in the second film.
Ding, 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 ding.
You got it. I know it definitely happens in the second film a bit, but I don't know whether it happens at all in the first film. So I think there's a possibility that at some point we're going to find him kind of captured, and maybe Ripley is gonna have to put the flamethrower to him or something, because it's kind of a lost cause situation.
Do you want to know what happens, or do you want to wait and see?
I want to wait and see, because I'm interested to know whether I've got this completely mixed up with the next film, or whether I've got aspects of it mixed up, or whether something like this does happen.
It's not as straightforward as you think, but I'll be sure to mention it when the time comes.
Okay. Yeah, let's just wait and see what happens with that.
Ripley's in command now and thinks that they should carry on with Dallas's plan. Lambert cries in panic. She wants to use the lifeboat to evacuate, but it won't hold all four of them.
And I think actually Lambert has a good plan here. I kind of understand why Lambert here is saying, let's just use the lifeboat, let's just draw straws, then at least some of us will get out. But I also understand why the others are reluctant to go for that. In this situation, I wouldn't want to be the person who randomly ends up with the short straw.
Yeah, it would be a real bummer, wouldn't it? I got a note here. It's a bit of a useless lifeboat if it can't hold all of the crew. But maybe we come to appreciate that the company doesn't really give a shit for human life.
Yeah, it is a bit of a bad lifeboat, but very on brand, I guess.
You sort of get the gist that the lifeboat feature is not its primary feature, that maybe it's just for, ship to surface travel, or like going between the ship and space stations and things like that. But in an emergency, because it's a self-contained unit, you can escape in it. I did read somewhere that the Nostromo was supposed to have 2 shuttles, but for some reason it now only has 1. But it never comes up in the film, so nobody at this point goes, darn it, if only we had the second slightly larger shuttle as well.
Right.
Ripley shouts Parker down. So Yaphet Kotto had actually been annoying Sigourney Weaver offset on purpose, because Ridley Scott told him to sort of play little pranks on her and cut her off when she was speaking and stuff like that, so that there'd be tension between their characters.
I think you mentioned this before.
Yeah.
It's very... I don't know how I feel about it, but I guess it worked.
Yeah, he says it worked, but he really regretted it, because he loved working with her, and he spent a significant portion of each day sort of kind of pissing her off.
Yeah.
Yaphet Kotto was also annoying Ridley Scott, not on purpose, because as the movie went on, he had second thoughts about his character's death, and he kept coming up with ideas of ways that he could survive.
Right.
And presenting them to Ridley Scott, to the point where Ridley Scott would arrive via a different door in order to avoid him. And well, let's see if he gets his wish.
Yeah, I don't remember the scene where that character survives.
Yeah, he was like, no, I'm gonna kill it. I'm gonna kill the alien. And Ridley Scott was like, just do the script.
Lifeboat goes into the distance, and we see him clinging to the outside of the hull.
It's got his teeth in it.
Yeah.
Ripley asks Parker to refill the flamethrowers, and he doesn't want Ash's help to do it. So that's interesting. So does he just not trust Ash, or is he still just sort of just being a little bit of a dick to him?
Maybe both, honestly.
Yeah, or indeed both.
He's clearly not liked, and he's not covered himself in reasons to be liked with his conduct in the in the last few scenes, I guess. And
hashtag Kane's son.
And we're about to get another weird moment as well with that.
Yeah, Ripley asks Ash for suggestions, and he says they're still collating data. Does anybody believe that at this point?
It's we're about to get into the reaction, which I think is a very good one, because it's a ridiculous thing to say in the current situation.
Ripley snorts in disbelief and reveals she's got access to Mother now and will get her own answers. Ash leaves. So it's interesting that the instant she says that, he fucks off.
Yeah. He's, but even just generally, the way that he's been acting very recently, as everything's going to complete shit, is calm to the point that it's just definitely creepy now.
Yeah, it should be like a strobing siren to everyone else that he's got something else going on.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to get that resolved fairly quickly. We get a quick scene of Parker going to refill the flamethrower, then Ripley doing the security dance to get into Mother. The shot of Parker refilling the flamethrower isn't in the director's cut. He just goes and does it. You don't see him doing it.
I guess it's not that necessary to see this, but it's kind of it's not just nice to see a shot of him being quite panicked.
Yeah, he's pretty jumpy.
Yeah.
Ripley sits down in the egg-like chamber and starts the interface. Mother says she can't explain why the science division can't help kill the alien because of Special Order 937. That's already pretty ominous.
It is.
Ripley uses a command override to see what Special Order 937 is, and it appears on the screen.
Just a quick note on this. I guess it's nice to have a scene where an override to a command actually works, because it feels like the usual thing to happen here is that for some bullshit reason they can't override it.
You get the impression that she's only been granted this command override now because all the higher ranking members of crew are dead
or missing.
Or missing. So Ripley uses a command override to see what Special Order 937 is, and it appears on the screen. Nostromo rerouted to new coordinates. Investigate life form. Gather specimen.
So I guess at this moment we get confirmation of what we suspected, which is that Ash knew a bit more about the mission than he'd revealed. I think it was becoming pretty obvious that he had something else going on just from the way that he's behaving, but this is almost a relief moment. Yes, he did seem weird. I wasn't just being paranoid. He definitely has an agenda here that hasn't been revealed to us.
And indeed, we didn't mention it, but Special Order 937 is science officers' eyes only. So Dallas and Kane had no idea of this, just Ash. Until Ripley used the override. interesting that it will tell you that these orders exist, but not reveal to you what they are. Um, the next part appears on the screen. Priority 1, ensure return of organism for analysis. And here we get our worst 8-minute cut ever, because it's literally in the middle of a line of text. There's a real stinger to Special Order 937, and it's not in this episode.
Yeah, I feel like it would have been nice if we'd just got a couple more seconds on this, but I'll allow it, just in that I feel like this next moment that's going to happen neatly caps off the action that we've just seen. So it's a couple of seconds out, but it's close. Close enough.
So who's infected then? You sticking with nobody? The ship itself? Is this question even relevant?
If Dallas is indeed still alive, could be infected with something at this point. But I don't know. I'm just going to say the ship for now.
I'm going to say I've put Dallas down with question marks. What happens next, Peter?
So I think what we're going to see is that the elaboration on these orders is that basically this is kind of at any and all costs sort of order. So the reason that Ash has been behaving in this sort of way is that his priority is to get this organism back at any cost to the life of the crew. It's not as important as getting this organism back. And I don't remember what the exact wording of that is going to be, but it's going to be a message to that end.
And that of course leads into the question: who dies next?
I think it might be Parker's time.
Right. You think all that wandering off to refuel flamethrowers might not be great for his health?
Yeah, I mean, he's on his own. He's isolated, just like that game.
He's Alien: Isolation.
And yes.
Alien: Isolation is a different game. And we're not legally allowed to talk about it.
So yes, I believe that his time might be up at this point.
All right,
I'm gonna call it.
So what are you thinking of the film so far? How does this 8 minutes add to your, or subtract even from your enjoyment of the film?
Yeah, so I get the idea that this is quite a iconic scene with the tracker and in the vents and stuff like this. And to be fair, there's not many scenes that aren't really considered iconic in this film at this point. But I do kind of get the feeling that this is particularly one that is considered in this way. And yet, as I mentioned before, it's not one that I have strong memories about. At this part in the film, I'm still enjoying it, but I think what I said a couple of episodes ago is true, that while I am enjoying all of these parts of it, the bit that really feels just kind of masterfully done to me is the bits that we've seen before this, the bits leading up to the kind of the chest bursting scene are the bits that I feel like elevate this film to something more than it might have been. And the rest of the film, I think, to me, is more just kind of an enjoyable horror romp. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that I think that we've seen the bits of the film that I'm most impressed by already.
Yeah, I mean, the whole face hugger chest burster thing is, iconic.
I mean, if there's any if there's any scene in this that could be called iconic above anything else, it's got to be that that one. That one, I feel like, even a lot of people who haven't seen the film know about that moment.
Yeah. It does make it harder to rewatch classic movies, I guess. Well, I mean, so imagine if you're coming into it for the first time. This scene has been parodied 1,000 times and talked about 1,000,000 times. So
if
it must be very difficult to see this film fresh.
If you've seen Spaceballs, you've seen this scene.
With some of the same actors.
Yes.
John Hurt is back.
I heard that he didn't realize quite how a recreation of that it was going to be, and and would have asked for more money if he'd realized just how much it would have been.
So God. Oh no, not again line. Don't order the special.
I saw that before I saw Alien, so
oh, that must have been an exciting and confusing moment.
Yeah, very surprising. Shocking.
Okay, so if any of you out there have any questions, particularly why is the length of this podcast seemingly doubled over the last few episodes?
Yeah,
when will you get it? When will you get an editor? Are you ever planning to stay on topic?
We're hoping to double the length every time, so that eventually, before too long, we're just going to be streaming it live 24/7
forever.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you have any questions or comments or like complaints, if you really want us to stop, email us at podcast@8minutemovies.co.uk, and we will observe those emails with our eyes, and then possibly discuss them.
But what, Kieran? What if they don't want to email this impersonal address? They instead want to stalk us directly in person on the internet in some fashion. How can they find you?
I guess you could just call me. My telephone number is 078.
Well, hang on, but
the internet. Oh, okay.
The internet, yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah, sorry, I misunderstood.
Yeah, don't dox yourself.
Oh, okay. I can be found on Twitter at Kieran J. Walsh, and you can be found on Twitter at Kestrel Pie. That's Kestrel like the bird and pie like the food.
No, like the irrational
without
number.
The E.
Like the irrational number. It's an anagram of my real name.
Pi is a transcendental number, isn't it?
I mean, I think it's a pretty good number. I wouldn't necessarily describe it as transcendental.
If you think pi is transcendental, email us. Why not? If you know anything about pi, the food stuff, or the mathematical concept, let us know, and we will respect you as a person for it.
If you work with Audible, get in touch.
Oh yeah, absolutely. If you work with Audible, write me a check and just keep adding zeros at the end, and I'll tell you when to stop. Okay. Put a number that's not zero at the start as well. That's very important. And I think that brings us nicely to our first ever 2-hour podcast. Goodbye, everybody. Good God, goodbye.
Goodbye.